Hi there, Serial Trader here. Let's have a look at weed as of today's close. And alright, so we had a nice positive day, which was certainly anticipated with the extreme oversold conditions we were in there. Now, zooming in here on the daily candlestick chart, we didn't actually put in a reversal candle per se, like this is not a bullish engulfing or a piercing candle or anything like that. It actually would have been preferable if we opened lower than Friday and then closed where we did. That would have actually been much better, at least from a candlestick perspective. But that being said, you don't have to have a specific buy signal to form a low, although I certainly prefer to see that because it really represents that change in psychology, right? I mean, you open lower than you closed, in the depths of despair on Friday, and then you close higher than you opened, just shows a major reversal. But that being said, possibly working a bottom here. Early to call it at this point. But if we go back, I have this trend line drawn connecting these significant lows here, the wave 2 and 4 low, and we've largely held that now, which is quite nice to see. We just came into that confluence of that 618 relationship between the blue wave A and C on this chart here, so that's good. We also did not close the gap, and actually we didn't even test the former resistance here at 3146. So we've held a lot of these levels here. Now I'll go on to the 4-hour chart. And if you look here, okay, so we got our 4-hour RSI deeply oversold there on Friday at 22 and change. Now we're starting coming out of that oversold condition. Still looks like even if we just have a corrective bounce, it's not, that leads to another lower low. Looks like this RSI still has a little bit more room to the upside before we're, in that downtrend resistance area, that 50 to 60 area. And actually just looking at this chart, since this overall decline started, our 4-hour RSI resistance has been around that, around 50. So right now we're only sitting around 37. So that tells me there's a little wiggle room to the upside, even if this is just a corrective bounce to lead to new lows. Okay, now if I go in a little closer, we'll try the hourly. No, we'll go for a little more detail than that. 15-minute. Maybe let's do the 5-minute, since we are just examining very recent price action. All right. So here's our so far what our absolute low is. Okay, 31.81. So we could, on this really short time frame, it may not be as clear as a daily or weekly chart, but we'll do some Elliott wave work here. So we'll draw our base channel, okay? And maybe I'll just get some labels going on here. And, potentially working a 1 up, an ABC down for 2, very deep 2, but we actually didn't make a lower low. We went to 31.93, and that's opposed to the 31.81 absolute low. Actually, no, hang on here. Is that a double bottom we made? Yes, so this actually is a double bottom, which is acceptable because wave 2 can retrace up to 100% of wave 1. It just can't go beyond. So we literally have the low here at 31.81, and then we have another low here at 31.81. So double bottom. That's actually quite nice. That's potentially a very bullish pattern because now we have that, clear double bottom, possible 1 up, 2 down. Let me just get this 5 over here, if that's where we ended, that 5-wave decline for C. So possibly 1 up, 2 down. We have our base channel drawn, which essentially is just a horizontal channel, since there's literally no difference between the origin of wave 1 and the extreme wave 2 as it's labeled here. we have what could be a nice strong third wave up, and that was the high of the day today at 34.56. Quite a strong move, quite good volume on that. And now we have potentially a wave for either complete or nearly so, potentially. And let's just do a fib retracement. So we don't need to do a fib retracement on wave 2 because we have a 100% retracement. So we already know that. We'll do our wave 3 retracement. And let's just bring up the common levels. 50% in the 382 are the most common for a wave 4. I suppose 618 is possible, although it's less likely in a fourth wave. It's a little deep for a fourth wave. So right now we've come down to in between the 382 and the 50% retracement level, which is certainly typical for a wave 4 if that's what we have going on here. Now if we can come up in a fifth wave and get beyond this 34.56, then we could have a fairly decent looking 5-wave advance off the bottom. And particularly, maybe we'll just bump up the time frame a little bit here, 15-minute. Particularly if we can come up in 5 and get out of this channel we've been in this whole time, right? This corrective price channel. That would be quite promising. That would really start to argue that, yeah, we got a nice hard pivot low here that we can be bullish against. And, once we have a little 5 up, we would have to, in all likelihood, have our requisite 3 down, right? Something like that. And once that was in place, be looking for another 5 up and then continue on with a series of higher highs and higher lows, potentially for a number of weeks or even months potentially, but weeks at least, days and weeks. So that's kind of how we're looking there on the real short term. Back to the 15-minute short term Elliott wave outlook. Now, obviously, well, for one, you wouldn't want to even come down and touch this wave 1 high at 32.59. I'd like to see that, not even be violated in any kind of corrective move down here. And then, obviously, ultimately, if we take out 31.81, that double bottom, that will lead to at least some near-term additional decline. Although I doubt it'll go a whole lot lower. If I just go back out to, well, I'll head back on over to the daily chart here. So if we did somehow not have a hard low in now, if we broke that 31.81, next potential stop would be closing this gap, which would be 30.55, or potentially testing this former resistance at 31.46, or in the most near-term bearish of scenarios, possibly looking for that equality relationship between blue wave A and blue wave C, which would be at 27.51, which would also coincide quite nicely with this previous triangle fourth wave termination point at 27. I just can't. I mean, anything's possible, but that doesn't seem like the probable scenario here. I'm more liking the possibility that we have a low in place, but there's certainly no guarantees in this game. Now, volume today was quite good. We had 5.47 million shares traded, so not quite as much volume as Friday, but you can still see relative to last couple weeks or so of trading, this is still higher relative volume. So you definitely want to see good volume when you're working a reversal and putting a turning point in a market. So that's certainly looking fine there. And if we just look over here at CGC, just to touch base on that one. So CGC also largely holding. This is the big wave 2 and then big wave 4 lows connected. Also largely holding this. Okay, so that's looking good. Volume, again, similar to weed as far as its relation to the previous volume. It's nice and strong volume comparatively with the previous couple of weeks. So that's looking good. And I'll bring up another thing too. Haven't shown this, so HMMJ, this is a ETF for the marijuana stocks, the Canadian ones. There's some U.S. Holdings in there, but it's largely Canadian marijuana stocks. And this is what I'm kind of working here. Well, I'll zoom out. So this only started trading more recently than weed, for instance, but this is the equivalent of the wave 2 bottom on weed, and this is also the equivalent of the wave 4 bottom on weed, although obviously the pattern's a little different. This is not a triangle, this is more like a, maybe a combination, a double 3, something like that. But corrective nonetheless. And then that formed a bottom. So I've connected that trend line. And wouldn't you know it, we just didn't even quite come down to test that trend line. And we also hit the median line of this base channel I've drawn for the ABC down on HMMJ. And also we have a nice, from that bottom, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, clean, non-overlapping impulse wave. So also got above that resistance level here in 5 waves up. And that resistance level is 2041. We went as high as 2067, and then had our 3-wave pullback. And now it looks like we've formed a decent pivot here and potentially working the next leg up here. So this is telling me, now this is just a broader picture of all the marijuana companies, whereas weed is just specific to itself. This is telling me that the tide, broadly speaking, is ready to rise, which can only help weed, as obviously weed is a major contributor to this ETF, although it's certainly not the only contributor. So I thought that'd be interesting to point out. Just kind of a sector look at the marijuana space instead of just weed. Certainly favors the bullish expectations for weed itself. But I'll leave that with you if you want to explore this more. I prefer weed since it has larger moves percentage-wise, and has actually been more bullish individually than this overall. Like this didn't make new highs here, whereas weed did. So keep that in mind. Okay, now we'll go back to wheat. I think I'll also just point out, I'll go to a bar chart daily. So we closed, if you look at the close only, and the close is this little horizontal bit on the right hand side of the bar. So we closed above the previous 2 closes, okay? So that's a pretty significant reversal. Although again, it's not an actual key reversal bar or a bullish engulfing or anything. But it's still a form of a reversal since the previous 2 closes have been basically dealt with in a single trading day on decent volume. So there's that. Alright, so as far as, we'll go back here. As far as stops, this is a tough one because, I mean, we have a nice potential 1, 2, 3, 4, looking for a 5 here. Right now I could only really say have your stop just below 3181 or on CGC just below 2421, because anything other than that technically is acceptable. I'd start to be getting a little well, we'll say it anxious here if we came down and overlapped this 1, although you could still have a 1, 2 and then just a larger 1, 2 under that scenario. So really the only thing to invalidate the potential for a bottom here is to take out the bottom at 3181. Now if that happens, it's really a matter of personal choice. Do you want to get stopped out and try buying lower? Or what if it's just a real quick, breaks the bottom by 10 cents and reverses strongly and you get stopped out and now you're chasing it back up? That's really a toss-up at this point. To me, we've either got a good pivot or nearly so. So really, if any additional weakness, I'd be looking to add, if anything. That's my take on it. Alright, that should be good for now. We'll check in as the week goes on. Serial Trader, signing off.